Hi everyone, a very good evening and a very warm welcome to today's session. I hope you guys are doing absolutely fine and amazingly well. Let's get started with our session for today. So आज हम बात करने वाले हैं about the beginning of English education in India. During the colonial rule, बच्चे, obviously before the Britishers came to India, the way the teaching used to happen was very different, traditional, more of like Gurukul जैसा system हुआ करता था. So how did we get exposed to the Western style of education, the present schools and the format that we have? How did English as a language and as a curriculum got introduced to, as a learning, as a learning objective got introduced to our curriculum? All of that we are going to understand today. So let me quickly introduce myself. Hi बच्चों, मेरा नाम अंकना है और मैं हूँ आपकी social expert at Embibe. As you can see, I have done my studies in the field of humanities and come with an experience of more than 9 years in the field of education, where I have had the wonderful opportunity to be able to interact and teach the students of both CBSE and ICSE online and offline. And because of my background, I specialize in English as well as social science. Talking about the chapter, so we are basically starting a new chapter today, which is your civilizing the native, educating the nation. What do you mean by native? Can somebody tell me native का मतलब क्या होता है? Native. What does the term native mean? Hi Snehal. Arnika, good evening. Welcome to the session. Who else do we have over here? जितने भी बच्चे बताएंगे मुझे नेटिव वर्ड जो है वो हमें पता होना चाहिए. लॉट ऑफ टाइम्स यू मे हैव हर्ड पीपल सेइंग आई एम गोइंग टू माय नेटिव प्लेस. मैं अपने नेटिव वाली जगह पे जा रहा हूँ, जा रही हूँ. नेटिव का मतलब क्या होता है? हाय परिनीता. Not civilized people. Okay. Native is basically, बच्चे, a place where your roots are. When we say your roots are, what do we mean? People who are born in a particular place, people who belong to a particular place, that place is known as their native place. So when we are saying civilizing the native, we basically mean civilizing the Indians, teaching them, educating them in the Western format, or bringing a new format of teaching, a more organized and a new functioning system of teaching, which was not here otherwise, right? Absolutely, Angel, bilkul sahi. Okay, address can be anywhere. So for example, I stay in Bangalore, but Bangalore is not my native place. My native place would be in Bihar, where I was born, where I basically come from, where my roots are, where my family is from, right? So that is what native means. So this chapter has been divided in the following topics, beginning with the beginning of English education in India, the very first one, which is going to be our topic for today. Then we have local schools before and during the British rule, which means how did it transform, what was the scenario before the British rule, and how did it change after the Britishers came in, and then what was the agenda of the national education in British India. Okay, so why were people teaching the Indians? How were they teaching the Indians? What did they want to bring out as a result and outcome? All of those things. So the concepts that we are going to cover today is going to be a big list. So we're going to talk about the British Orientalists, people who oriented, people who designed, gave a new format to the teaching. Contribution of William Jones to Indian education, we'll also know who he was. Origin of Asiatic Society of Bengal, views of, again, see, we talk about Jones again, and Colebrook for Oriental learning, contribution of company officials to Oriental learning, British criticism of Orientalist vision of learning, James Mill as a critic, Thomas Babington Macaulay as critic of Orientalists, English Education Act of 1835, Wood's Dispatch of 1854, and Missionary Education in the 19th Century India. ये सारी काफ़ी सारे टॉपिक्स देख करके लग रहे हैं, आपको लग रहा होगा बहुत सारा कॉन्सेप्ट्स, it is a lot, but it's not. These are small, a lot of them are just like small introduction that we are supposed to have and get an exposure to those topics. It's not a very lengthy concept in particular, in specific, all of them. कुछ है, कुछ नहीं है, ठीक है. Ayush, good evening, welcome to the session. So let's get started and understand how I am teaching to you. Who started it all together? Where did the system come from? How did we used to learn earlier? ये सारी चीज़ें इस चैप्टर में आज के सेशन में और आने वाले सेशंस में हम करेंगे कवर. तो बच्चों इसी बात पे अगर आपके फ्रेंड्स यहाँ पे नहीं है, if your friends are not already here, please make sure to go ahead, share the session with them, inform them that ma'am is already live and ask them to come and join, because the introduction of how in the native India Britishers के rule में education began, that we are going to do today. So talking about it, if one thing has accompanied mankind in our evolution, it's learning, right? What has made us grow? What has made us evolve? What has made us change and progress for better? It definitely has been knowledge, education, different discoveries, different innovation. But those discoveries and innovations, agar usko break down kiya jaye, if you break it down, where did it really begin from? It began from learning. It began from education, curiosity, to the idea to know more. So it is ultimately learning of different things, of life processes, of how the world works, of environment, of resources, of everything and of anything and everything that is around us. And just like that, we have transformed, so has the way we share knowledge. You're learning in a certain way with me today. But 15 years back, 20 years back, could somebody have imagined that a teacher who's standing in an office in Bangalore in a building would be talking to students who would be all around the entire nation? क्या 20 साल पहले ये सोचा जा सकता था? When I was, let's say, in standard 8, I couldn't have imagined learning sitting at my home, just opening a phone or a laptop and having a live class when I'm talking to the teacher, interacting with the teacher, getting my doubts solved, having all these beautiful visualizations and text and learning, right? So one thing that we have understood, that learning keeps on happening, but it is also growing, it is also evolving, and the way we share knowledge is changing constantly. It's not today how it used to be 25 years back. It's not today how it used to be 50 years back. 25 years back, how the education was, it was not the same 50 years back, right? So the pattern, the way things are done has only kept on changing and evolving. In the 18th century, a lot of Western scholars visited India and became interested in the learning of all about our tradition, society and culture. So it's not like India was not teaching its people. It's not like we were not learning, knowledge was not being spread. It was just done in a more traditional, conventional way and different from the others. But it did got the interest and it did catch the attention of a lot of Western scholars, a lot of Western people who were visiting us. Under the influence of these Orientalist thinkers, the Indian education system would evolve throughout the next 2 centuries. So when they got their interest, when they got their attention, slowly now everything was going to change. Slowly everything was going to progress and evolve, and it started happening. Come, let's learn about how our ancient heritage helped William Jones transform our education system. So we have a certain hint with this particular, line that William Jones is responsible of what the changes and how the changes happen. So let's get started and talk about these. So William Jones in 1783, तो 18th century की बात हो रही है, 1783 की, वहाँ से शुरू करते हैं, ठीक है? He joined as a junior judge at the Company Supreme Court. What do you mean by Company Supreme Court? Basically, bache, if you remember, I have mentioned it to you in Revolt of 1857 also, that when Britishers started ruling over here, the British government was not directly ruling. Earlier, the East India Company had come and set up the rule. And after the Revolt of 1857 is when the government, the monarchy over there took control of the Indian setup. तो अभी यहाँ पे क्या है? Company जो rule करी थी, and because we are talking about 1783. So company had its courts also, judiciary also used to exist. So he was a junior judge over there. So in simple words, William Jones was a judge. वो एक judge थे. Linguistic prowess की बात करें, so he was very proficient in Greek, Latin, French and English. So he seems to be a well-learned man. He seems to know a lot of things. He had a lot of proficiencies. बहुत सारे languages आते थे उन्हें, including Greek, Latin, French और English. He also learned Arabic and Persian and delved into Sanskrit with Pandits. So apart from these 4 languages that he already knew, when he moved towards the eastern side, he also learned Persian, he also learned Arabic, and then started working with the Pandits, the priests, because earlier the Brahmins used to be the teachers, right? The priests used to be the teachers, and hence they had all the knowledge of the language. So he also got in touch with the Pandits, with the priests, and started learning Sanskrit from them. Extensive studies, बहुत ज़्यादा पढ़ाई की, बहुत ज़्यादा time दिया, explored a lot of Sanskrit texts on diverse subjects. He read Sanskrit books and texts which spoke about, which taught about, which had the ideas about law. Because if you remember, he is a judge, right? तो judge होने के नाते संस्कृत में law के बारे में जो लिखा था वो पढ़ा, philosophy, the general happenings of in and around the world and lives of people, about science and a lot of other things. So it was not that he was just learning. You can see his hard work and the depth he wanted to build in his learning. Then what was his contribution to the learning system in India? He pioneered translation of Indian texts into European language. So guys, European language क्या है? If you talk about French, if you talk about English, ठीक है, all of these is basically what a lot of people in Europe in different parts would speak in, right? Greek भी मान लो Greece के लिए, ठीक है. So what he started doing was, there was a lot of Indian texts. He started translating into their language because he was proficient in a lot of European languages. As a result of which, naturally, what will happen? See, a gap will only be built when the Western world and the Eastern world have their own set of books and nobody is able to understand what is written in these different books, right? ये दोनों की अपनी अपनी किताबें हैं, but किसी को समझ नहीं आ रहा है इन किताबों में लिखा क्या है. These people are not able to understand their text and they are not able to understand the Eastern text. But what he did, this gap, he started building as a bridge by translating these texts. So, when these texts of Eastern world were now available in the Western languages, the Western people could easily read it, understand it, and that is what inspired the British Orientalists in India. Facilitated cross-cultural exchange, preservation and dissemination of Indian knowledge to the West. So he started spreading the ideas and the knowledge that we had over here, जो हमारे पास इंडिया में थी, ठीक है. He built a connection. And naturally, बच्चे, when you read a book, when you watch a movie, see, when you're watching a movie, what are you doing? You're basically learning about a lot of background and context of a different country. If you're watching a movie, let's say, which is made in US or UK or Korea, anywhere, which is where the culture is different, which is not of your nation, you learn a lot about the lifestyle, you learn a lot about the culture and tradition and the language and the habits and food habits, whatever it is of that nation, right? So, similar thing happens with the books. Book is another source of exposure. अब हमारे पास movies और serials से पहले नहीं हुआ करते थे, तो book से ये सारी knowledge मिलती थी. So whenever you would read a book, let's say even a novel, right, which has been written in the context of US, a different nation altogether, you learn a lot about their dressing, their language, their mindset, their traditions, everything. So that cultural exchange and that cultural connection, integration started happening. एक connect बन गया, information exchange होने लग गया, लोग एक दूसरे के culture को समझने लगे, adopt करने लगे, सीखने लगे, ठीक है, preserve किया, expand किया knowledge को all around. That is, and why is that? Because a lot of text was earlier available. पहले भी बहुत किताबें थी in India, but they were in Sanskrit. But with the help of William Jones, now these texts were available in different languages which had a higher reach, a larger reach at a larger scale. अब जब ये किताब उस लैंग्वेज में कन्वर्ट हो गई जिसमें बहुत सारे लोग पढ़ सकते थे, बड़े स्केल में पढ़ सकते थे, ठीक है. So Jones found like-minded British officials. So he was a scholar. He wanted to work around it. He wanted to bridge the gap. He wanted to gain knowledge and spread knowledge. And people who are of a certain mindset will always find people who resonate with them, who relate with them. तो उन्होंने अपने जैसे कुछ और officials को ढूंढ लिया, जैसे कि कोलब्रुक एंड हलहेड. ठीक है. The similar pursuits of exploring ancient Indian heritage, mastering Indian languages, translating Sanskrit and Persian texts into English was their goal. They wanted to learn everything about the Indian subcontinent, their tradition, their history, the heritage, the culture. And in order to do all of this learning, they also wanted to spread this knowledge. ठीक है, सिर्फ खुद सीखने से मतलब नहीं था, उनको ये knowledge spread करने का भी बहुत शौक था, so that the future generation and other people could also get idea and learnings about these. तो उन्होंने जो भी text संस्कृत और पर्शियन में अवेलेबल थे उनको ट्रांसलेट भी किया, so that more people could get to know about it. And together, along with the two officials who were of the similar mindset, they formed an association, एक society built की, एक club, you can say like a club, like a cultural club he built, which was known as Asiatic Society of Bengal, because we are talking he was based out of Bengal, right? तो वहाँ पे उन्होंने एक Asia based club बनाया, where he was exploring the Asian culture, whichever places Britishers were, the text, the knowledge, the culture, everything, by reading them and translating these texts and books. They started a journal named Asiatic Researchers. तो एक जर्नल भी शुरू किया लोगों तक इंफॉर्मेशन पहुंचाने के लिए, एंड उसका नाम रखा Asiatic Researchers. Okay. Now Jones and Colebrooke's attitude. So we are talking about the views of Jones and Colebrooke of Oriental learning. अब जो ये नई learning चल रही है, इसका मतलब हमें समझना है. What was their attitude? What was their take? How did they behave, react, think about this whole setup, the change that they were making? उनका सोचना क्या था, सोचने का तरीका क्या था? They shared deep respect for ancient Indian and Western cultures. So when they were reading about Indian cultures, बच्चे, we also understand they were not doing it to look down upon. They did not disrespect. They did not find Indian text, culture, tradition, heritage to be lower. ठीक है, उसको उनको ये नहीं लगता था कि ये low leveled है. It is not up to our level. It is very old, very primitive, not developed. No. He used to very, very deeply respect what knowledge and tradition and everything was available in India, just like he did about the Western culture. So he was understanding both the cultures. He came from the Western culture, was learning the Eastern culture and wanted to bridge the gap, and hence respected both the things. Believed Indian civilization peaked in the past but declined over time. So you understand, he's reading the whole history. He was reading the whole history. He was discovering all these facts. He was comparing the present with the past, trying to understand. He never undermined. He never, underestimated the potential and the power and the status that India had back in past. उन्होंने कभी डिसरिस्पेक्ट नहीं किया कि यार इंडिया तो कभी कुछ नहीं था. ही कुड हैव हिडन, ही कुड हैव स्प्रेड द रॉन्ग नॉलेज बाय रीडिंग दीज बुक्स दैट hey, India has never been anything, India is nothing. No, he respected the fact, he acknowledged the fact that India at one point in the past was greatly civilized, is one of the ancient civilizations, had seen its peak, कभी एक टाइम पे बहुत पीक पे रहा है, has had its very high good times. It is just that it was in the past which could not be maintained in the present. Present तक उस चीज को लाया नहीं जा सका है, hence the decline has started happening. Hence India has become weaker in terms of having its own strong government, and others were able to capture it. The Britishers were able to capture it. ठीक है. Now his focus was pretty much on ancient texts, पुरानी जो भी किताबें थी उनको पढ़ना, उनको translate करना, to learn about the heritage and culture. So he believed understanding India required exploring the sacred and legal texts from ancient times. So he was very clear, and which is very true. See, even when you're trying to make friends with somebody, what do? If you really want to become a good friend of that person, you need to know about where they come from, who are their family members, what kind of a person the other people around them are, what kind of person the person you're trying to make friend is, what kind of events and incidents has happened in their life, how they have behaved in the past, so on and so forth. Once you have an understanding of the background of any person, any place, it becomes very easy to deal with it, settle in, and do whatever you want to do around it or around the person. अगर आपको किसी से दोस्ती करनी है, किसी के बारे में, किसी जगह के बारे में कुछ जानना है, वहां सेटल करना है, जब आप उनके बारे में पढ़ते हो, उनके बैकग्राउंड को जानते हो, ये पूरी चीज बहुत आसान हो जाती है. एंड दैट इज व्हाट ही स्टार्टेड डूइंग. ही क्लियरली सेड कि इंडिया जो पूरी इसकी हिस्ट्री रही है, इंडिया आज जहां पे पहुंचा है, आई वांट टू अंडरस्टैंड दिस, आई विल हैव टू गो बैक एंड रीड हाउ द लॉ फंक्शनड, how the culture functioned, and read all the old, all the ancient texts, and that's what he started focusing on. With the help of these texts, it revealed authentic Hindu and Muslim ideas and laws. So he learned about the religion, he learned about the laws, he learned about the religious laws, right? So that was what he started doing along with his two other friends and formed the Asiatic Society of Bengal. चलो अब इसी बात पे एक क्विज क्वेश्चन कर लेते हैं. Who was appointed as a junior judge at the Supreme Court in 1783? Lord Macaulay, William Woods, William Jones or William Henry? Who was appointed as a junior judge at the Supreme Court in 1783? Lord Macaulay, William Woods, William Jones or William Henry? Okay guys, and let's look at your answers. Angel Srivalli Nagaraj, क्या बात है? Correct answer, perfect timing, good job. Athar, Parinita and Sonali have also answered correctly और काफी जल्दी जवाब दिया है. Arnika, have you not answered but you taken a attempt? We have been learning about this person for a very long period of time. It is William Jones. I think Arnika का भी जवाब आ गया. Wonderful, wonderful. So, बच्चे, William Jones is also known as the father of Orientalism or the father of Orientalists in general. I'm just wondering how none of you have till now asked me, ma'am, what do you mean by the term Orientalist? Do you guys know that already? Yes, Parinita, क्या है बच्चे डाउट आपका बताओ. What is your doubt? And yes, my question, what do you mean by Orientalism or who are the Orientalists? What do you mean by this very term? Because we have been talking about Oriental learning, Orientalist, Orientalism. पता भी तो होना चाहिए कि इसका मतलब क्या होता है. What does this even mean? Anyone? No? Done and dusted? Okay, Parinita, आप अपना doubt बच्चे please put it in the chat. I'll answer it. And I'm not sure if you guys know it or not, but I'm still going to explain. बच्चे, Oriental learning और Orientalism, ठीक है? Those who learn many languages, Parinita, absolutely correct. Very good. So, not just language, culture also. So, बच्चे, Orientalist word actually came around 18th century in the context of what we are learning. ठीक है? So, Oriental learning or Orientalism basically means learning of culture and multiple languages. ठीक है, उसको हम Orientalism कहते हैं. And people who do this, the scholars, right? The scholars who do all of this learning of cultures, different languages, they are the people who are known as Orientalists. उनको Orientalist कहते हैं. And the father of Orientalist is William Jones. And there's one Cunningham also. So William Jones, जिनके बारे में हम इतना पढ़ रहे हैं, is actually known as the father of Orientalism. And here the learning was about culture and multiple languages of Asia. That is why Persian, Sanskrit, all of that is there. ठीक है? परिणीता, आपको डाउट भी है बच्चा, तो प्लीज मेक श्योर दैट यू पुट योर डाउट इन द चैट, आई विल आंसर इट. So we are understanding that they were Orientalists, right? Because they were Orientalists, they wanted to learn everything about the Indian culture, everything about all the Indian languages, all the languages in and around India. So now if you talk about the purpose of discovering these texts, they were finding ancient old texts, right? But an ancient text of any place actually gives you a proper background, a history of, a detailed history of the journey of a person, of a place. ठीक है? Parinita, because that's what he liked, he wanted to, he was an Orientalist, right? He was interested in it. For example, if there is a geographer who does the study of the land and the different minerals around it, etc. Why do they do that? They like doing it. They want to specialize in it. Similarly, because William Jones was an Orientalist, he wanted to learn and know more and more about different cultures, different languages. Hence, he was putting all his time and energy in it. Okay? तो अब ये ancient texts क्यों कर रहा है? So in a lot of movies you would have seen, especially the interesting old historic documentaries, etc., where people go and find old books, old accounts of different people who would stay in a kingdom. Okay, why do we do that? Because you want to know all the details of how things happen, and it also helps you form a timeline, a flow chart of how the transformation of a person, of a place, of a nation happened. So it was very important for him to have hands on the ancient books, to know that where did the practices come from, where did the tradition come from, where did the language come from, how did the changes and the shifts happen, right? So he aimed to form foundation for India's future development. So he wanted to work on the development of the future of India. But you cannot work on future unless you're not sure about the past. Past के बिना, past की knowledge के बिना आप future build नहीं कर सकते हो. He intended to enable British learning from Indian culture. So what do we understand? He wanted to have a blended learning. Blended learning से हमारा क्या मतलब है? See बच्चे, when you are going into a place where the culture is absolutely different, like when Britishers came to India, the culture, Britain is a Western country, right? Very different, developed at that point relatively than India, very developed in a very different way, industrialized, education system was very different, and that of India was very different. Now, if William Jones would have wanted to implement exactly the same thing that was happening in London, let's say in Bengal of India, it wouldn't have completely worked out, because the people, the culture, the tradition, everything is very different. The mindset is very different. People, in simple words, are different of both the places. So he wanted to learn about the people of the place where he was trying to make the changes. आप जहाँ बदलाव करना चाह रहे हो, पहले उस जगह को तो समझो. आप उसके हिसाब से फिर बदलाव कर सकते हो. Then you can make the changes accordingly. So he wanted to implement things that he had learned, he had in his mind from, let's say, London, but of course do it with a proper blending. ठीक है, blend करके उसको integrate करके with that of India. So he wanted to have a blended learning. So he wanted to basically train Indians based on a learning format which had a touch and essence of their own culture, so that it would be more acceptable and it would be easier for people to adopt. ठीक है, आप किसी भी चीज को जब एक नई अडेप्टेशन करा रहे हो, एक नई चीज को अडॉप्ट कराने की कोशिश कर रहे हो, लोगों को एकदम से नया करोगे तो people will resent it, will rebel it, may not accept it, may struggle a lot. बट जब आप उनको उनके तरीके से ही एक नई चीज सिखाओगे तो इट्स मोर एक्सेप्टेबल, इट्स मोर ईजियर फॉर देम टू एडजस्ट. So he hoped to help Indians rediscover their heritage and lost glories from the past, which is so great, which a lot of Britishers were in fact not doing. But that's the difference between a general person and a scholar. Scholars, intellectuals, well-read people, they don't look at these discriminatory things and boundaries. They want to focus on the truth and the right. So contribution की अगर बात करें of the company officials to Oriental learning, सबसे पहले आता है promotion of Indian learning. So lot of company people, they advocated, which means they supported and spoke for promoting Indian learning over Western education. As I told you, they said we should educate the people, but we don't have to do it in our way. We should do it in their way so that they accept it. And it's easier for them. They are able to adapt to it. They propose setting up institutions, which means schools, colleges, to encourage studying ancient Indian text. They were very clear that India already had all of the knowledge in their own format existing. नई किताबें, नई चीजें बनाने की जरूरत नहीं थी. इंडिया में एक से one more, I mean, there have been great mathematicians, historians, physicists, chemists. किसी भी चीज की बात करो, scientists की बात करो, साइंस की बात करो, मैथमेटिशियंस की बात करो, हिस्ट्री की बात करो, all of these things India has always had has always been very rich in inhibiting such people, right? We have had people like Aryabhatta, जहाँ से knowledge सीख करके लोग जा करके कहीं और उसके बारे में बता रहे, right? So these texts already existed in India. So these company officials were professing that if we want to educate the Indians, we don't necessarily have to bring our format, our books, our curriculum. We can use what is already theirs and teach them, which will open more chances of people accepting the new learning and being a part of this movement. They wanted to focus on native language, local language, their people's own language, right? So they advocated that instead of going with new languages, the teaching should happen in the language where people have been already being educated and learning in, like Sanskrit, like Persian, because these books also existed in the same language. People were used to these languages, people were more acceptable and open to these languages. They emphasized teaching subjects familiar and valued by Hindus and Muslims rather than alien topics. Rather than bringing topics which is absolutely new, have no clue, no association with the Indians, rather talk about religious texts which give some learning, some information and philosophy of life to the Indians. Talk about their contextual learning. तो इंडिया के सेटअप में, इंडिया के लैंग्वेज में, इंडिया की किताब का इस्तेमाल करके ही इंडियंस को पढ़ाना. Instead of talking about, let's say, industrialization, how can it happen, or what is happening in London, if that is what you're teaching to Indians, especially back at that time, it wouldn't have made sense for the people. So this is what these officials wanted to profess, and this is what they supported, right? Now, what were the other contributions if we have to talk about? They simply believed that when you use the local language, when you use the native language, which is the language which people are already familiar with, people are already open to, would help the British gain respect and acceptance from the locals. I've been telling this constantly, right? When you bring a new thing and impose it on people, people hate you, people hate that new thing. But when you give it, when you achieve your agenda by giving what already is theirs, providing them, enabling them to use their own materials, and still you are achieving your agenda of educating them, will also help them first accept the change, accept what you're trying to introduce, but also build a respect for you. And acceptance, adaptation, sab aati hai. They set up madrasa in Calcutta in 1789 to promote the study of Arabic, Persian and Islamic law. तो बच्चे हमें पता होगा मदरसाज आर बेसिकली इस्लामिक रिलीजियस स्कूल्स कह सकते हैं. तो उन्होंने मदरसा कैलकाटा में क्यों सेट किया कि भैया जो बच्चे पहले से ही अगर मान लो कुरान पढ़ रहे, कुछ पढ़ रहे, तो दे ऑलरेडी आर अवेयर ऑफ दीज लैंग्वेजेस, दे आर ऑलरेडी फेमिलियर विद दीज लैंग्वेजेस, राइट? हाय मोहम्मद नजरूल, वेलकम टू द सेशन. गुड इवनिंग बच्चे. ठीक है, दे आर ऑलरेडी अवेयर ऑफ दीज लैंग्वेजेस. व्हाई नॉट टीच देम, मेक देम लर्न इन दीज न्यू लैंग्वेजेस, राइट? हाय डायरेक्टर सिस्टम. तो इन्होंने मदरसा जो सेट किया वहाँ पे अरबिक में, पर्शियन में, इस्लामिक लॉ, इन सारी चीज़ों को पढ़ाने लग गए बच्चों को. हिंदू कॉलेज वाज एस्टैब्लिश्ड इन बनारस, विच इज़ द BHU, है ना, बनारस हिंदू यूनिवर्सिटी इन टुडेज डे, in 1791 to encourage the study of ancient Sanskrit texts. So, बच्चे, Islam and Hinduism were the two major religions that was being followed at that time. So, the texts that belong to these religions and other texts that belong to the India or Indian subcontinent is what they started using and created centers like madrasas and Hindu college for people to come and learn from them. ठीक है, चलो तो अब इसी बात पे एक नेक्स्ट क्विज क्वेश्चन भी फटाफट से कर लेते हैं. द क्वेश्चन इज कैलकाटा मदरसा वाज सेट अप इन विच ईयर? 1813, 1781, 1713 और 1782. कौन से साल में जो कैलकाटा मदरसा है उसे सेटअप किया गया था? अभी अभी पढ़ा है हमने, विच ईयर वॉज दिस मदरसा सेटअप, एंड इट वॉज फॉलोड बाय द सेटिंग अप ऑफ द हिंदू कॉलेज विच इज बनारस हिंदू यूनिवर्सिटी इन टूडेज डेट. Okay, and I see a lot of students have answered. I think probably because it's the date you might have got confused, but no worries. Anika, Rafan Hussain, Snehal, absolutely correct and perfect timing. Good job. और हमारे पास एंजल, अथर, देविन, शिवल्ली, नागराज, सोनाली, ऑल ऑफ यू हैव टेकन एन अटेम्प्ट. आई रियली अप्रिशिएट दैट यू गाइज. बहुत अच्छी बात है. और श्रवण ने अभी तक जवाब नहीं दिया है. द करेक्ट आंसर इज 1781. ठीक है, 1781 में मदरसाज वर बीइंग सेट अप. ठीक है. So at the beginning of their rule in India, the British government wanted to know about the old custom and administration of India. Some officials were interested in promotion of Oriental learning, cultural and language linguistic based learning. So for this, the madrasas were set up in 1781 along with Arabic, Persian and Islamic laws. These things were being taught to the students. ठीक है, B है answer. Absolutely correct. ठीक है, wonderful. Okay. Now, British criticism of Orientalist vision of learning. So, we have already understood that these are the people who are talking about promoting Indian text, Indian ancient history, Indian law, India के चीज़ों को ही promote कर रहे हैं. So, naturally, there will be people who would not be in support of this. They would want to westernize it. They would want it in their own culture to be done it, to have it done, right? So, early 19th century में there is a shift that we see. Earlier, where the officials were in favor of using the Indian text, the Indian language, everything, there was a certain shift over there. What was the criticism? They said that Eastern knowledge was erroneous and lacked scientific rigor. तो अब आप देख रहे हो क्या शिफ्ट आ रहा है. एंड कहीं ना कहीं दिस ऑल्सो साउंड्स एरोगेंट. सो बच्चे, वी कैन ऑल्सो आइडेंटिफाई द प्रॉब्लम ओवर हियर. द पीपल हु वर देयर अर्लियर, if you talk about the regular Orientalists who were existing before this, right, they were trying to create a certain acknowledgement of the text that was there in India. They accepted it, they wanted to promote it, and that would have given a sense of pride to Indians. That is why they would have even more wanted to learn and get educated. But these new people, what did they started saying? They're saying all of these Eastern texts, Eastern as in the Indian, Persian, all of these texts are erroneous. They are incorrect. They're invalid. They don't have any evidence. They are just randomly written there. They don't have any scientific rigor. It's mystic. It's very fictitious in nature. कोई भी substantial learning नहीं है. कोई भी proper जो है evidence based factual learning नहीं है. It's just random text which doesn't make sense to educate people in. Right? बच्चे, मेरा नाम अंकना है, डायरेक्टर सिस्टम. व्हाट इज योर नेम? They perceived Eastern literature as unserious and frivolous. So basically, they would just take it as a joke and something which has no, concrete base, and very, very not seriously, like as if it's just something that people have written and done in a passing by. कि मजाक में बस बना दिया है. The worth, the value was not realized, and the respect was also not given, which is very, very wrong. Officials began questioning the value, the importance, the significance of efforts devoted to studying Arabic and Sanskrit. They said, why are you wasting your time on this? It's not investment, it's sheer wastage of time, putting your head and mind into something which has no background, which has no basis, which is not concrete. ये बर्बादी है समय की. So they naturally were opposing this approach of James Mill and his colleagues. They dismissed the idea of teaching, to appease the native sentiments. So we are understanding that Orientalists wanted to go ahead with the language and everything because it would have been more acceptable. People would have been more open. People would have been more comfortable. and of course it would have touched their emotions, their heart. They would have had a sense of pride and also respected the Britishers and hence cooperated with the Britishers. But they're saying, I don't care about their emotions. I don't care if you want to appeal to their sentiments. Why do we have to do that? We want to educate them. We will force it on them. Okay? Yes, Parinita, they also thought it was full of error. It was incorrect, right? यहाँ पे जैसे हमने पढ़ा ना, they kept on saying that it was erroneous. Erroneous is what? Not appropriate, absolute, not correct. Incorrect थी texts बहुत, scientific नहीं थी, fictitious थी, lack करती थी कोई भी evidence, concrete नहीं थी, abstract थी, right? They advocated practical and utilitarian education. They stressed the importance of teaching what was deemed useful. And useful for whom? अगर हम यहाँ पे बोल रहे हैं कि वो बात कर रहे हैं, वो पढ़ाओ जो useful है, किसके लिए useful है? Who should it be useful for? What do you mean by useful over here? When these guys are saying that useful होना चाहिए, क्या मतलब है उसका? Guys, what do you mean by useful? Who should it be useful for? And also, what do they intend to say? Deepak, you should read more and more books. The more you read, the more you write, and try to converse in English. It will help your language skill. That's the way to learn any new language, the best way. The more you speak in it, even if you're speaking it wrong, just practice speaking in it continuously. It will help you a lot in gaining the fluency. So, they wanted it to be useful for the Britishers. See, for them, the knowledge of ancient culture of India and all of that was going to be absolutely useless. What would the Britishers do if Indians were aware of their history, their culture, laws, etc.? So they're not just talking about people being educated. The point is, if you are investing your energy, if Britishers are putting their time, energy and efforts into educating Indians, how can they utilize it for their benefit? उनका उससे क्या फायदा हो सकता है? So that is what they're trying to do, right? Absolutely. Shravan, it should be useful for the Britishers. So they're saying that the knowledge, whatever you're teaching, should be practical and should be utilitarian, which means should have more utilization, should be used more often. And if you teach these things to the people, then it is not very much the utility, the useness, the usefulness, the use cases are not going to be so very high for Britishers. They'll just be educated, but it will not help us. So हम क्या करेंगे इसका? ठीक है? Now emphasized introducing Indians to Western scientific and technical advancements. So we know a lot of discoveries, developments was happening in US, UK, etc., Western world. So they clearly said whatever it is we are learning over there will be taught to the Indians also. इनको सीखना पड़ेगा. They will have to learn it. There is no point in teaching all of these things to them. It's absolutely useless for us. They disregarded the importance, the significance of Oriental poetry, the different language poetries, the sacred texts in education. They said all of this in practical life is useless. This knowledge will be of no use to the people, so better disregard it. They suggested a departure from teaching Eastern literature and culture. They said teaching these people their own literature, their own culture is going to not benefit us and is not going to benefit them. They will just be learned, but in something which is not going to be practically applicable anywhere. So might as well not teach that. ये पढ़ करके क्या करेंगे? ये poetry, ये sacred चीजें, तो इसको बंद करा दो. इसको नहीं पढ़ाना है. हमारे काम नहीं आएंगी, हमारे किसी इस्तेमाल की नहीं आएंगी. ना इनका knowledge, ना ये लोग. इनको वो पढ़ाओ जो हम पढ़ते हैं. Make them read, make them learn what we are learning. The changes, the technology, the science that we are advancing and growing, that we are exposed to, इनको वो पढ़ाओ. तभी ये हमारे भी काम आएंगे, इनका नॉलेज हमारे काम आएगा. ये सारी मेहनत बेकार हो जाएगी ये पढ़ाने में. इसको खत्म करते हैं. And propagated the promotion of Western knowledge and practical subjects in education for Indians. कि अब इनको ऐसे सिस्टम में पढ़ाया जाएगा, ये सब सिखाया जाएगा. So you have to tell me who's the person that we are talking about who attacked the Orientalists. Was it Lord Hastings, James Mill, Colebrook, or all of them? Who attacked the Orientalists? बच्चे, if you're aware of who the Orientalists were, you'll be able to answer this. We have been constantly reading about this person's criticism. It was a concept also. इनमें से किसकी बात कर रहे हैं हम? Who was the critique of this system? दीपक, बिल्कुल मैं हिंदी में भी पढ़ाऊंगी जरूर, आप टेंशन मत लो। हाँ जी, कौन है जो कह रहा है कि ये जो सिस्टम आप बना रहे हो ये बिल्कुल बेकार है, इसको क्रिटिसाइज कर रहे हैं, इसको डिसरिगार्ड कर रहे हैं? लॉर्ड हेस्टिंग्स, जेम्स मिल, कोलब्रूक और ऑल ऑफ देम, या ये सारे ही जने? चलो देखते हैं, लेट्स सी। देवन स्नेहल सोनाली गॉट द आंसर एब्सोल्युटली करेक्ट इन परफेक्ट टाइमिंग. रफान हुसैन एंड श्रवण आंसर एब्सोल्युटली करेक्ट एंड दैट टू वेरी वेरी क्विक. वंडरफुल. हमारे पास शिवली नागराज हैव टेकन एन अटेम्प्ट. Anika Angel Athar also have taken an attempt. बच्चा, it was James Mill. मैं पीछे जाके आपको दिखा दूं. James Mill as a critic of Orientalists is what we have been doing. ये सारी बातें किसने बोली हैं? All of these things is being told by James Mill. ये सब कुछ कौन बोल रहा है? James Mill बोल रहे हैं. तो ये इसका सही जवाब क्या होगा? James Mill होगा. ठीक है? Okay. So, James Mill argued that the British should not entertain native requirements, aspirations. Instead, Britishers should teach what is useful and practical. Indians should be made familiar with the scientific and technical advancements of the West rather than sacred literature and poetry of the Orients. तो अभी तक ओरिएंटलिस्ट्स जो हैं, इन्होंने जितनी मेहनत की थी वो सब बेकार होने वाली थी. ठीक है, जेम्स मिल बच्चे एक ब्रिटिशर थे जो क्रिटिसाइज कर रहे थे इस पूरे सिस्टम को. दीपक, ठीक है. अब वैसे ही एक दूसरे इंसान आते हैं, टॉमस बैबिंगटन. टॉमस बैबिंगटन का क्या कहना है? ही इज ऑल्सो क्रिटिक ऑफ द ओरिएंटल लर्निंग. ओरिएंटल लर्निंग क्या है? द लर्निंग दैट वी हैव बीन सीइंग टिल नाउ. अभी तक जो यहाँ पे हम इतनी सारी लर्निंग की बात कर रहे थे, वी वर टॉकिंग अबाउट ऑल ऑफ दीज पीपल हु वर फोकसिंग ऑन ओरिएंटल लर्निंग, दैट इज गोइंग टू बी कंप्लीटली रिगार्डेड. सारी मेहनत जो है आपकी विलियम जोन्स की, ठीक है, उनके साथियों की, बंगाल एशियाटिक सोसाइटी की, ये सब क्या हो जाएगा? ये सब जो यहाँ पे उन्होंने इतनी मेहनत की है, ये सब अब क्या हो रहा है? उनके अपने लोग आफ्टर अ सर्टेन पीरियड ऑफ टाइम विल स्टार्ट क्रिटिसाइजिंग इट. तो कोलब्रूक, हल हेड, इन सब ने जितनी भी मेहनत की है वो सब अब क्रिटिसाइज होगी. तो जेम्स मिल की क्रिटिसिज्म वी हैव ऑलरेडी सीन, वो हमने ऑलरेडी समझ लिया है. अब हम 1 सेकेंड, नाउ वी आर गोइंग टू अंडरस्टैंड. अब हम बात करेंगे टॉमस बैबिंगटन की. तो ही वाज अ लीडिंग क्रिटिक इन 1830s. ठीक है, तो नाउ ऑफिशियल्स आर टर्निंग देयर बैक्स ऑन द सिस्टम. अब इस सिस्टम से वो अग्री नहीं कर रहे. 1813 में आते हैं टॉमस बैबिंगटन, जो बिल्कुल कंप्लीटली अगेंस्ट है फ्रॉम द अप्रोच दैट विलियम जेम्स हैड, राइट. तो ये जो विलियम जेम्स की अप्रोच है, जो कोलब्रूक की अप्रोच है, हलेद की अप्रोच है, द ओरिएंटलिस्ट अप्रोच वेयर दे आर टॉकिंग अबाउट टीचिंग द कल्चर, द लैंग्वेज, ईस्टर्न लैंग्वेज एंड कल्चर. वो जो कह रहे ओरिएंटलिस्ट की ईस्टर्न कल्चर जो है, हिंदूज और मुस्लिम्स के जो रिलीजियस टेक्स्ट हैं, जो एंशियंट चीज़ें हैं, वो ही पढ़ाओ इनको, उसके बिल्कुल अगेंस्ट हो जाते हैं. 1830 में आते हैं ये. उनका मानना ये था इंडिया इज एन अनसिविलाइज्ड प्लेस. ये एक ऐसा देश है जो डेवलप नहीं है, सिविलाइज नहीं है. People have not learned how to live. They have not transformed into settled human beings like other places in need of civilization. So he felt कि इस जगह में लोगों को सीखना, सभ्य बनना बहुत ज़रूरी है. अभी तक ये सारी चीज़ें नहीं आती हैं इंडियंस को. इंडिया एक ऐसी जगह है जहाँ पे if you teach them about their own culture and tradition, it will not be useful, plus they will remain as they are already, which they need to transform from. उनका कहना ये था कि इंडिया के लोग पहले से ही यार बहुत ही अजीब तरीके से रहते हैं, सभ्यता नहीं है यहाँ पे, कोई कल्चर जो है इनका फॉलो करने के लिए अगर आप उनको उनकी किताबें पढ़ाओगे तो वैसे के वैसे ही रह जाएंगे. जो डेवलपमेंट, जो सेटलमेंट, जो ग्रोथ की ज़रूरत है वो और ज़्यादा नहीं होगी, प्लस वो नॉलेज हमारे काम भी नहीं आएगी. सो ही क्लियरली डिस्पैरेज्ड ईस्टर्न नॉलेज, बिल्कुल डिसरिगार्ड कर दिया, बिल्कुल नेगेट कर दिया, मना कर दिया कि बेकार है. एंड स्टेटिंग none could match England's production. So he did a clear comparison. He said whatever Indian old texts are, it is nothing in front of what England has. इंग्लैंड में, लंदन में जो भी लोग पढ़ रहे हैं, वेस्टर्न कल्चर में लोग जो भी पढ़ रहे हैं, वो ईस्टर्न के लैंग्वेजेस में, पोएट्री में कुछ भी नहीं है, वो कहीं भी स्टैंड नहीं करता है, बिल्कुल बेकार है, बिल्कुल भी वर्थ नहीं है. बिलीव्ड अ सिंगल यूरोपियन लाइब्रेरी शेल्फ आउटवेड ऑल इंडियन एंड अरेबियन लिटरेचर. कैन यू अंडरस्टैंड हाउ डिमीनिंग एंड डिसरिस्पेक्टफुल दैट वाज? दिस व्हाट ही सेड वाज रियली रियली डिसरिस्पेक्टफुल. इनका कहना ये था कि लंदन में एक लाइब्रेरी के एक शेल्फ पे 4, 5, 10 किताबें जो हैं, उसको अगर आप उससे जो आप सीखोगे, उस लर्निंग को अगर आप इंडिया के और अरब के, मतलब जितने भी टेक्स्ट है, संस्कृत, पर्शियन, अरबिक, उन सारे टेक्स्ट के सारे लर्निंग से अगर आप कंपेयर करते हो, तो भी क्या होता है, जो लर्निंग आप उन लंदन की किताबों में से सीख रहे हो वो मच बेटर होने वाली है देन कंपेयर्ड टू व्हाट पीपल वुड बी लर्निंग इन इंडिया. इंडिया की सारी किताबों से, जो कि बहुत ही डिसरिस्पेक्टफुल एक कमेंट था, राइट? He urged the British government to cease spending public funds on promoting Eastern studies, deeming them impractical. सीधा बोल दिया, आप जो ये यहाँ पे इंडिया को, इंडिया के कल्चर के बारे में पढ़ा रहे हो, वो impractical है, किसी काम का नहीं है, बेकार है, सारे पैसे बंद करो, सारी मेहनत, टाइम, एफर्ट बंद करो. So he clearly said no more putting money into teaching Indians their own Eastern knowledge and culture. It's absolutely useless. It has no worth, no value, no usefulness in practical life. People will not be able to implement that knowledge. He simply saw English as a tool to expose Indians to the world-class literature, Western science and philosophy, which means learning in local languages he did not agree with. कहा कि भाड़ में जाए कि इस लैंग्वेज में पढ़ रहे हैं, इनको इंग्लिश सिखाओ. व्हेन दे लर्न इंग्लिश ओनली देन दे कैन लर्न एवरीथिंग अराउंड द वर्ल्ड, दे कैन ग्रो. ये बाकी चीज़ों को पढ़ पाएंगे, वेस्टर्न नॉलेज को समझ पाएंगे. इंग्लिश सिखाना बहुत ज़रूरी है. ही बिलीव दैट व्हेन पीपल लर्न इंग्लिश दे विल बी सिविलाइज्ड बाय ऑल्टरिंग टेस्ट, वैल्यूज एंड कल्चर्स. कैन यू सी हाउ बायस्ड ही इज? ही बिलीव्स that if English is what people learn, they will know how to behave, they will have a better taste, they will have a better class. तो वो कह रहे हैं कि लोगों का लिविंग स्टैंडर्ड नहीं, एक्चुअली लोगों की जो है वर्थ बढ़ेगी, लोगों का टेस्ट बेटर हो जाएगा, लोगों की क्लास बेटर हो जाएगी, लोगों का जो लेवल है वो बेटर होगा सिर्फ इंग्लिश सीखने से. वो सिविलाइज्ड हो जाएंगे, सभ्य बन जाएंगे. Which is so wrong. It doesn't matter what language you learn. Once you get educated, you naturally grow as an individual, right? But he is only demeaning everything that Indians had. Thought English knowledge would facilitate awareness of Western developments and refinement of Indian society. So he believed that India and Indians can actually grow, develop and be refined, can get better, transform into a better version once they learn English. And if they learn English, they will be able to learn everything of the Western knowledge. एक बार जब लोग अंग्रेजी सीख जाएंगे तो वेस्ट के सारे नॉलेज को वो पढ़ पाएंगे और इसकी वजह से वो बेहतर इंसान बन सकते हैं. Which is so sad, right? A person can always grow by learning anything and everything. And Indian ancient texts also have its own value and a lot of depth in learning, a lot of exposure. But he completely disregarded that. And then came the English Education Act of 1835 as a result of all of this criticism of the Oriental learning. ये जो ओरिएंटल लर्निंग थी, विच वाज सपोज टू हैपन इन लोकल लैंग्वेज, ऑफ द कल्चर, ऑफ द ट्रेडिशन, ऑफ द लॉ ऑफ एंशिएंट इंडिया, ईस्टर्न नॉलेज, वो बंद कर दी जाती है. उसे क्रिटिसाइज किया जाता है, उसे बहुत ज़्यादा क्रिटिकली एनालाइज किया जाता है. एंड देन कम्स दिस लॉ विच वॉज इनैक्टेड following Macaulay's influential proposal known as Macaulay's Minute. Guys, remember this, very important. It declared English as the medium of instruction for higher education. Decision to cease support for Oriental institutions such as the Calcutta Madrasa and Banaras Sanskrit College or Banaras Hindu College. क्या किया? Oriental learning बंद. No more spending money on Eastern learning. ठीक है, Eastern knowledge go to the garbage. All the money that used to go to the madrasa, everything that was done by William Jones, he stopped it. ठीक है, उसको बंद कर दिया. He clearly said when people are going to learn at higher level, English is going to be the medium. English में ही पढ़ेंगे लोग, English में ही सीखेंगे, बाकी सब बेकार है. And this change was known as Macaulay's Minute. These were the shifts that he brought. So let's quickly answer the question. Who saw India as uncivilized country that needed to be civilized? किसको लगता था कि एक असभ्य देश है इंडिया और उसे सभ्यता सीखने की ज़रूरत है? Thomas Babington Macaulay, Henry Thomas Coolbrooke, Nathaniel Halhed और none of them. इनमें से किसे लगता था कि इंडिया एक असभ्य देश है, उसे सभ्य बनाना है? India is an uncivilized country, it needs to be civilized, and of course that can happen by making them learn English. Okay guys, and looking at your answers, Thar, Snehal, Shrivali, Parinita ने बिल्कुल सही जवाब दिया. Correct timing, good job. Arnika, Angel, Rafan Hussain, Shravya and Sonali have also answered absolutely correct, and that too very very fast. Interesting. Attempt has been taken by Devin and Nagraj, और श्रवण ने अभी जवाब नहीं दिया है. It was Babington, है ना, जिनके बारे में इतनी बात कर रहे हैं हम, जितना पढ़ रहे हैं इनके बारे में, उनकी बात हो रही है. इट वॉज हिम हु एम्फेसाइज्ड एंड ही ऑल्सो कट ऑल द फंडिंग. सारे पैसे ही देना बंद कर दिया उन्होंने आगे की लर्निंग के लिए. ठीक है, तो इन्होंने मान लिया कि ये जो लर्निंग है ओरिएंटलिज्म वाली इज अ टेम्पल ऑफ डार्कनेस दैट पीपल वर फॉलोइंग देमसेल्व्स इनटू डिके. बेसिकली आप अपनी बर्बादी की तरफ बढ़ रहे हो अगर आप ये ओरिएंटल लर्निंग कर रहे हो. इफ यू कंटिन्यू विद दिस, इट वॉज सीन एज आउटडेटेड, ओल्ड, पुरानी तरीके से मानी जाती थी. एंड डिकेइंग एजुकेशनल एस्टैब्लिशमेंट्स, इट्स लाइक डिग्रेडिंग एवरी स्कूल, कॉलेज, एवरी लर्निंग सेंटर इज लाइक गोइंग बैक. इट इज डिग्रेडिंग इंस्टेड ऑफ एडिंग वैल्यू, वैल्यू घटा रही है, ऐसा मानना था उनका. सो नाउ इंग्लिश टेक्स्ट बुक्स वर बिगन टू प्रोड्यूस फॉर स्कूल्स. तो अब स्कूल्स में कैसे पढ़ाई हो रही थी? इंग्लिश टेक्स्ट बुक्स वर नाउ बीइंग यूटिलाइज्ड, राइट. Now Wood's dispatch of 1854, guys, यहाँ से जो पोर्शन है वो हम नेक्स्ट सेशन में करेंगे गिवन इन इंटरेस्ट ऑफ टाइम. लेट्स क्विकली समराइज व्हाट वी हैव डन टुडे. तो हमने पढ़ा इन 19th century ब्रिटिश ऑफिशियल्स इन इंडिया shifted educational ideologies, right? Orientalists like Jones and Colebrook explored Indian heritage, later which was criticized by people like James Mill and advocating practical Western education. Thomas Macaulay influence led to 1835 English Education Act, also Macaulay's Minutes, prioritizing English medium as for education. The rest of the things we have still not done, so I'm not going to summarize that. बाकी सारी चीजें हम next class में करेंगे, ठीक है? भारत classes, okay? तो अब मैं आपको मिलती हूँ अगले session में. So please do not forget to register yourself. We have still not learned, but we'll be learning of how Wood's dispatch altered the traditional Indian education system to benefits of Britishers. So anyways, we have been seeing that they have continuously been talking about their own benefits. But how was the Indian education system before the arrival of British is very important for us to understand. How did the children learn before that? Why are they being called uncivilized? Was no learning happening? Were there local language vernacular schools? ये सब कुछ हम next session में करेंगे and it's going to be very very interesting. So please make sure to register yourself. And guys, आपको कुछ भी नहीं करना है. You have to ensure that जो आपको school exams में जाके CBSE में 8 select कर लेना है. यहाँ पे जब आप home पे जाओगे, so under home you will find the Imbibe live classes. यहाँ पे as you can see, this is for example the session that's happening. You just have to ensure that you're registered for this session. ठीक है, जो भी सेशन आपको लिस्टेड दिखे या आगे आने वाले सेशंस जो भी आपको दिखे, ठीक है, ये फॉर एग्जांपल दीज आर द अपकमिंग सेशंस, जस्ट मेक श्योर दैट यू आर रजिस्टर्ड फॉर दिस सेशन. ठीक है, आपको रजिस्टर पे क्लिक करना है एंड यू हैव टू गेट रजिस्टर्ड. And that is how you can join the sessions and not miss its notification. Do not forget to explore our Imbibe Lens app. And we are continuously running different sessions for you to make sure that you have a better preparation for your exam. So stay tuned. Students on YouTube, subscribe कर लो, video like कर देना अगर अच्छा लगा तो, and do not forget to share with your friends and tell me in the comment section how was the session. You guys do not forget to register for the upcoming sessions. See you guys soon. Till the next time, guys, have a great evening. Stay put. Take good care of yourselves and your loved ones. I'll see you in the next session. Stay tuned and keep imbibing.
Keep imbibing. We believe in you.